Globespan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion with the pros, the cons, the ones that have taken a side, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globespan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation building. Globespan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation building. As we span the globe for voices from the diaspora and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana. This land is our land now. As the world turns on its axis, bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adapt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globespan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Welcome to Globespan Television here in New York, broadcasting live in Guyana, the Caribbean, and in the diaspora. This program is being made available by Mr. Noir Singh and by Mr. Devin Bisoon and Mr. Ryan Gobin. Our guests tonight, we have three very, very powerful guests. Mr. Leland Rupnarayan, who is a political analyst, Mr. Darren Wade, a lawyer, very prominent upcoming lawyer, and Ms. Annette Ferguson, former minister, junior minister in the Ministry of Public Works, a social worker, and an HR consultant. Globespan is being brought to you, as I said, by live here, and we want all our audience to know that the views expressed tonight are those of our guests and not necessarily the staff or the management of Globespan Television. We are a fair and balanced network, and we also make sure that we give everyone a platform to hear their views. So anyone who wants to come on here to hear their views, we welcome you at all times. Before I get to the program, Globespan, again, the staff and management of Globespan Television congratulates President Ali and his team on his victory at the election held about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So once again, congratulations to President Ali and his team. Now, tonight's program, we'll talk about the elections, we'll talk about GECOM, and we'll also discuss other various political issues as time goes by. The time now is 7:37 p.m. and on the 24th, Wednesday the 24th, and again, we are broadcasting live. So tonight, again, we welcome our guest. First, I'll start with Mr. Darren Wade. Mr. Wade, this is the first time on our program. Could you give our audience a background of yourself?
Good night to you, Dr. Rose, and Mr. Narayan and the other guests. Good night to you all and your viewers. Let me thank you for having me on your program. As you mentioned, my name is Darren Wade. I am a practicing attorney at law in Guyana. I am from a village called Litchfield on the west coast of Berbice. I am a husband, I'm a father, I'm a man of God. I'm a Christian from the Anglican denomination. Thank you.
Mr. Wade, you're Barbician like me, but I'm from the quarantine. Good, congrats. Ms. Ferguson, I'm seeing you now. Are you there?
Yes, I am here, Dr. Rose.
Good.
I am here.
And Mr. Rupnarayan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Ms. Ferguson, first of all, I want to ask you the question about the elections, first and foremost. The voter turnout was extremely low. And the average, they say, was about 51, 52%. But they're saying that Black voter turnout was lower than that. Why do you think that is happening?
Dr. Rose, just before I answer your question, may I say a pleasant evening to my esteemed colleagues here on this platform, Mr. Rupnarayan and Mr. Darren Wade, and a pleasant evening to all your viewers and listeners. It's a pleasure indeed me reappearing on this program. I must also apologize to you, your audience, for my video. I just don't know what is happening with the camera settings. But that being said, yes, on this 1st of September 2025, there was extremely low voter turnout at the regional and general elections. My firm belief of this is as a result of, I guess, I had interactions with many persons, and they share their views that, because of us not entering into a coalition, that is the APNU and the AFC, many persons decided to stay home because they believe that once there was a coalition, the sitting government would have been defeated at the polls. And outside of that, once there was a coalition also, you would not have had an emergence of, this new political movement called WIN, We Invest in Nationhood. So in a nutshell, to capture what I've just said in response to your question, many persons stayed away because there was no coalition between the APNU, AFC. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Ferguson, for that. Mr. Wade, I will ask you this question. When We Invest in Nationhood made a lot of inroads into the Black neighborhoods, Linden, the one Linden, and they made a lot of inroads into Georgetown, and even from your village not your West Coast, Barbies and up to Quarantine. Why do you think Wynn was able to capture so many Black votes and not Indian votes?
Let me put it this way. I believe the issue started within the 2015-2020 with the Green government administration. And we have to, in order for us to go forward, we need to be honest with ourselves. A lot of our supporters feel let down by the Green administration that they were not taken care of. Let me give an example. Mr. Nandlal had mentioned that when it comes to PPP supporters, some sort of preference must be given to them, because at the end of the day, your support base, those are the persons who vote for you, and you must secure your base. When I did economics I did communications at University of Guyana, we did something called scarcity of resources in economics, the basis. And politician always, and what it teaches you, there's always a dilemma. There's always a dilemma with politician, whether or not we're going to use our resources to safeguard our base, or whether or not we are going to use the resources to try to gain new supporters. I believe in that dilemma, I believe we on the 2015-2020 era, with the focus more or less was probably to try to get more move from your base and to get more support from elsewhere, or to gain support more from the PPP areas and so forth, or what we call traditional PPP areas. That didn't work out for us. Then come 2020, certainly there may have been issues would have affected us within the PNC, the quote unquote infighting, persons leaving the party, the public spectacle that we all know about. So no need we put our heads in sand like ostriches, but everything else is exposed. So it's important for us to examine the current status of the PNC and on how we arrive here where we are today. So our supporters more or less are looking for leadership, and that is how they end up with Win. Quite frankly, Win leader appears to have a lot of money. There's a lot of flamboyance. He spends it there. He drives a nice car. He appears to be someone for the people. And let me put on the record that I'm also one of his attorneys at law. So just for transparency's sake, when you look at him building houses in West Coast Bobis, and so forth. Person will say, this is a man of the people. This is a man that we want to get in. It's only natural. This is a man that if we get into government, he is going to take care of us. He's on record saying that he don't want a salary. A lot of our party groups, I could tell in particularly in Region 5, they are not functioning across the board. So political activism is lacking tremendously within the PNC. Right across Georgetown. What we oftentimes face, and also the PPP, whenever there's a Congress, suddenly these groups are activated and mobilized. But since the Congress gone, there are no party groups. So that is why WIN was able to go into the villages in all across Guyana and in Region 5. And in Region 5 and gain a lot of support.
Okay, thanks.
And a lot of these persons, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, what I was saying, a lot of the leaders or the persons at the top in the party, the activism more or less were piss poor. So you have persons in the out of region, we moved from, and Comrade Ferguson could hear me out, we moved from like 7,000 or 8,000 votes in region 2 to about region to about 1,000. That's in so like 6,000 or 7,000 votes that we lost there. So and it's the same in region 5. So the issue is that when you have leadership that is not from the people, and you have persons who are more or less selected and placed there, it's very difficult from a top-up approach, from a bottom-up approach. So the PNC of itself need to look, do an introspection, as I mentioned before, where we came from and how we arrive.
Okay.
How we arrive here.
Thanks, Mr. Wade. Mr. Rupnarayan, I have a question for you here. Both the international and local observers have said that the elections was fair, free, and transparent. But yet some people are complaining that that was not the case. What are your views on this, Mr. Rupnarayan?
First of all, a free election is where every vote counts. So in the context of that, I would say the election was free. Whether the election was fair, it means everyone has a chance to put forward their viewpoints, let their manifesto be heard and read, and let their policies, whatever they're formulated, be heard by the people. That part was not fair. That didn't occur in Guyana for the simple reason that the incumbent PPP prevented WIN from getting media support, even though they were paying for their ads. WIN used whatever personal resources they have to campaign in this election, whereas the PPP used a lot of state funds to do this. Now, many national projects where Guyanese taxpayers' dollars were involved in was utilized by a political party to gain traction. It's not a PPP, it's not a red shirts, it's the country's money. So that's a deceptive policy, but it works because they get votes because people think the PPP has done a good job. But it's the government of Guyana, which is very different from the PPP, that caused these things to happen. The government of Guyana utilizing taxpayers' money. But the election results was phenomenally, or the word is a tectonic shift, with WIN getting 16 seats. What is the reason for this is twofold. One, the leadership of the APNU PNC was very weak, was very troubling, and was extremely controversial, which produced a lot of fallout from long-standing members of the party, many of whom joined the PPP. I think they were looking for greener pastures. Some joined the WIN. However, the reason why WIN, the main reason why WIN got so much seats is because they sucked away the votes from the APNU, because the APNU supposedly were disillusioned because of the APNU's policies, their attempt to thwart the 2020 election results which the PPP won, and also the vacuum in leadership where Mr. Norton was seen as a very poor and ineffective leader. In a nutshell, WIN campaigned with their own financial resources, just like the APNU, where the PPP had to divert a whole lot of state funds because 3 months before elections, 300 and something A whole ton of money, $300 something billion was requested from the consolidated fund for the government to run. And I think that money was for campaigning purposes. However, Win focused on the Amerindian areas, and if you look at the results, Win got a few more votes than the PPP in in all the Amerindian areas, which is mainly issue 1, 7, 8, and 9. I'm not going to go step by step in the results here. 1, 7, 8, and 9 are the Amerindian areas, and Win got a few more votes than the PPP. The PNC, of course, got very few votes. Not to mention the AFC that got next to nothing. So let's go forward now. Win appeal to the modern generation of Guyanese. We are not here in a colonial struggle or just a post-colonial struggle. The colonial struggle and the post-colonial struggles are gone. Their generations gone. And when we look at grassroots that the PPP and the PNC tend to look for support, we have bypassed that grassroots stage and we have gone contrary to that, to the treetops, which Win has managed to tap into, because Win campaign a whole lot on what modern technology provides, social media. That's where the bulk of advertising takes place, the social media. The days of the loudspeaker and driving around villages are gone. Secondly, the philanthropic work that Win did in assisting people whose homes were damaged by flood and fire, people who needed a wheelchair, people who needed surgery, people who had no houses and 8 of them living in a few zinc sheets nailed together, and he provided a home for them, goes a far way and makes a loud statement to the people of Guyana that the government of Guyana has state resources that can build a house for people with taxpayers' money, because some people are just can't afford to build a house because they're in a dire situation. A mother doesn't have a husband, have 5, 6 children, the house damaged by fire. They need extremely urgent help. Win stepped in there and did a great job. Sadly, the PPP think that wasn't very necessary. So by and large, the vacuum created by the lack of leadership in the PNC/APNU, or whatever they call themselves now, caused Win to tap into those votes and sucked away those votes.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
Dr. Rose, if you
Yes.
may allow me just to
Go ahead.
pick up on a point that Mr. Rupnarai made mention of with regards to persons who were not in favor of the policies put forward or advanced by the coalition. I beg to differ. Look, we had a superb, we call it plan between 2025, 2030 to move this country forward. I think if you look at what is contained in the APNU's manifesto for the last election, this 2025 election specific, we spoke to the issue of housing. We spoke to the issue of raises in salaries. These issues actually touch the heart and core of our people. And I can tell you, just today, as I was moving around in Georgetown, many persons engaged me. And people were honest to say to me, look, Annette, I voted Win because of X reason. Y'all had a good policy, Y'all had a superb plan to carry this country forward. But what was your major problem? 1, you had disunity. 2, they not going to the election in a cohesive way, whether it's by way of coalition. And thirdly, I think, persons had, they were a bit disgruntled because of, our preferred presidential candidate. I can think up to yesterday in church, I had brethren expressing similar things to me yesterday. So many said to me, this is the way we went because of, y'all got to get your house in order. And, I believe person's heart is still with the APNU, PNC party. What persons want to see is that a united front. And once we can get our act together to bring everybody together and solve the infighting and find solid resolve, I think for me, the PNC will win back all the hearts and souls of our people. So I don't think it's the policies that really push persons away from us. As I said before, it was superb, right? But these were the negative factors that caused persons to go to win. And then, you know, this whole thing with contract, the PPP giving a little gutter contract here, or building a bridge here, or building a concrete strip here. You know, people, that's what people gravitated with. So it's bread and butter issues, you know, bread and butter issues. So I think I just wanted to bring clarity to that gray area that was raised by Mr. Rupnarain. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Rose, I also would like to tap in here before we move on, if you permit me.
Go ahead.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Dr. Rose. The question in relation to moving away from the traditional type of voting that Mr. Rupnarain mentioned, I don't believe that is so. Because when you look at how our Indo brothers and sisters voted, they stuck with the PPP. It is the Afro people, more or less, who supported Win. Our Indo brothers and sisters stay traditional. It is the Afro votes who place Win where it is today. So it's more or less the PNC who lost. Based upon the voting, their base went away from them, and their base didn't turn out. So I want to point out that, and yes, I concur with Comrade Ferguson, that the disunity affected us tremendously. It caused people to stay away, and it caused people to go with Win. There was also issues because on the campaign trail, questions were raised to me in relation to our presidential candidate and what have you. I remember years ago, and I took some flacking for it. Years ago, on the Dr. David Ein show, I raised the issue of us in the PNC. If we're going to go with Mr. Norton, we must invest a lot of money in relation to PR and to make him, you know, acceptable, because, you know, Mr. Norton is a good man. I know him personally and so forth. But this perception that he's rough and rugged, he's always rude and so forth. But we needed to invest PR in it, in softening him, so he appears a little relaxed or lighter to the people. If you follow me, thank you.
Good. I have a question for all of you here, and I'll start with you, Ms. Ferguson. Then Leland, then you, Mr. Wade. In 2020, APNU, led by David Granger, won 217,000 votes. The PEP, led by Dr. Orphan Ali, won 233,000 votes. So the PEP had 15,000 votes more than APNU. In 2025, the PEP got 242,000 votes. APNU got 77,000 votes. In other words, APNU lost 150,000 votes in 5 years. Now, there are several reasons that could be accountable for this collapse. But do you think, as you said, Ms. Forrester, you all have a very good policy. So do you think it was a leadership problem in this case here?
Dr. Rose, yes, I do believe the leadership issue that is currently confronting the PNC in particular would have caused many of our people to stay away from the polls. As I said earlier, that was one of the factors. So I don't know from the 150,000 how many persons may have stayed away, and from this figure, how many persons actually went to Win, right? Because perhaps we might have had persons who were supportive of the AFC, and some persons who might have been supportive of the People's Progressive Party Civic, you know, small percentage in numbers, they may have supported the Win Party because of, you know, based on all the examples that were cited by my colleagues on this program here. So I believe the reason for our major downfall, to lose 150,000 in 2025, is as a result of what is currently facing the People's National Congress reform. And again, as I said earlier, another factor that would have led to us losing by some 150,000 is as a result of people staying away from the polls. That's one, because they believe that the only way the People's Progressive Party Civic could have been defeated is by way of all the major, all the smaller parties coming together in a coalition, form. And mind you, while we might be focusing here on the PPP, the WIN, and the APNU, you also had two smaller political parties, the FGM, Forward Ghana Movement, and also the ALP, right, by Simona Brooms. So they too, Simona, I think, got 900 and something votes, while FGM got about 4,000 and something votes. So when you accumulate those two figures, it might have given us a seat, right? An extra seat. So what I'm saying here, with all the split in the votes on 1st of September 2025 that went to all these major small parties, led to us losing significantly on elections day.
Mr. Rupnaran, APNU lost 150,000 votes. What do you think were the reason for that within the last 5 years?
Poor leadership, straight up. Very poor leadership. And the APNU policies that they had between 2015 and 2020 did more harm than good to them, especially when you give yourself a 50% increase in salary, and then you put VAT on education and electricity and water, things that people are struggling to pay, much less you added on a tax to it. However, Ms. Ferguson makes a very valid point that with Ms. Simona Broom's party that was basically swept away, no pun intended here, right? Ms. Broom's party was swept away, and Ms. Amanda Walton Desi, who managed to get a seat, would have contributed to a PNC stronger show. That's a very minimal show, and they would have gotten an extra seat, which doesn't mean anything much in the context of this election. Had it been prior elections, we know what an extra seat means. An extra seat means you either win or lose an election. Because prior to this election, the other elections were won by one seat. 2015 and 2011, one seat made a difference. Even 2020 was a one seat, plus the joy of the votes. So Ms. Ferguson has a very valid point, but Ms. Ferguson has to do a whole lot of restructuring and a whole lot of planning for her party to come back and strong. It's a strong party, but it's lost its valor, it's lost its energy. And if you have a leader who looks like Idi Amin, you're not going to get support. First of all, it's a system where Ghana legally elects a dictatorship for president. Regardless of whether Mr. Norton had won this election or Dr. Ali, he calls himself Dr. Ali, we still have a constitution that gives total power to the presidency and the president, which makes the president legally a dictator. Even if you win by one seat, you still run the country like a dictator. And you can't run a country and alienate half the population like what Mr. Granger did and like what Mr. Jagde did prior to that, and we can go on and on. Everyone has to have a say in Ghana. Ghana doesn't belong to Irfan Ali or Mr. Norton or Mr. Granger or Mr. Jagde. Ghana belongs to the people of Ghana. And the people of Ghana should have a say in how their monies are spent, how their resources are managed, and how contracts are awarded. And the very constitution that allows people to set up systems to monitor these things have backfired, because the very people who you put and you pay to make sure your money is spent properly are the ones who end up basically conning you out of your own money by awarding contracts on flimsy logic and flimsy, what you call the status quo holds here. Awarding the Tipu contract is a case in point. It's a flimsy deal, but the contract for nearly $1 billion, $875 million is stuck. And Guyana's biggest investment to date, the gas to energy project, is 2 years behind schedule and costs mounting. So people think about all these things, yet they go and vote different from what their conscience tells them to vote. So that's the sad thing about Guyana. I remember in the PNC days when we line up for flour and oil and people will state vote for the PNC. There's something wrong here with the logic. People are building a skeleton factory. They're building an Amelia Falls project. There's the Surrender Hospital, the Enmore packaging plant. All these things have caused millions of US dollars, maybe $500 million, over close to $500 million US dollars. These 4 projects have cost Guyanese, and we have seen no results from them. Yet people will vote for the PPP, and the same reason people vote for the PNC, because there is a linkage there, and it's called an ethnic security linkage, that people feel confident in voting for their own particular race. And this last election here, Indian people vote the most racist more than any other election. They won't switch their votes to any other party. They have voted solely for the PPP. Well, that's their choice, but it's still a heavy racist voting in this last election here.
Mr. Wade, I have a more soaring question for you, more troubling question. In your wildest dream, could you have imagined the PNC losing Linden Region 10 and Georgetown Region 4?
Absolutely not. I know heading to this election, I had some concerns. If I'm on Facebook, if we are friends on Facebook or you follow me on Facebook, you would have seen that I've been pleading and crying for years to my party, because the same concern that we mentioned here in relation to leadership and so forth. I believe Mr. Aubrey Norton, our leader, is very experienced and so forth. But when you look very often times of his lieutenants and so forth, you could see what was coming. You can see what was coming. As I mentioned, in addition to his lieutenants, and there's an argument that the core of the PNC pull away from him. That is an argument, or the core of the PNC fought against him. I've heard that argument, and I've heard another argument that while the core of the PNC pulled away from him and did not support him, there's an argument of him not outreaching, not doing an outreach. So if the core attack you, you attack back. So there was no equity, there's no peace. Or if there were fractions, there was no attempt, rather proper attempt of bringing the fractions or the real fraction together. And many, oftentimes, persons who are entrusting with roles and function could not have carried out the roles and function. I made examples on Facebook, but very oftentimes we put Courtney Watch to open batting. And those of you who follow cricket, you know how troubling that is. Because very often a lot of fits were placed in senior positions to carry out functions. And that for me was troubling. Was troubling within the leadership. As I mentioned, the example, the chairman of the party is from Region 2. You will go to Region 2 and you will see a significant drop. What happened to those party groups? The same thing in Region 5. I was in Region 5 over the weekend and people are crying and complaining. Everybody's switching out. So what we see, many of the lieutenants, the chairman, vice chairmen, and so many of the party lieutenants who should be working on the ground, bringing the party together, were persons more or less who are inexperienced and who were not ready for the role that were entrusted in them. Sometimes it was better than having persons who have an ambition, who will compete against you for office, than having yes men or lieutenants who are yes men and go with what you say. But they may be good enough to secure your base and secure your leadership in the party. But to win an election, the incapacity was certainly there. And that, I believe, was the problem in the PNC. That's what caused us to lose Linden. That is what caused us to lose support throughout the entire Guyana. This person could not have carried out the functions and so forth. And I see that. So when David Granger left, a lot of the persons, there's an argument that they pulled away, they fought against Mr. Norton. There's an argument that Mr. Norton fought back rather than trying to, if there's an issue as a leader, sometimes, I was raised by my great grandmother as a Babishan, and I never understood when the training, but whenever there is a problem with my siblings, even when they wrong me, and she says sometimes you have to give up your rights for peace. You follow?
Yeah.
The good book taught us that if a farmer, one of his 99 sheep left,
shepherd,
the farmer shepherd, same thing, shepherd, yes. He will go out and get that one sheep, and when he found that sheep, he will bring it back and he will call his villagers and they will celebrate. So I find very often time by the leadership that was not done. An attempt to do an outreach to bring the lost flock back in. Those who were there probably believed that they could have done it alone. And this is politics. Politics is about numbers. I'd have the maximum number. That is, I believe, was critically absent from the equation. Bringing in the lost flock.
Okay.
Trying rather than what we experience in the public too. Every time someone wanted to leave or threatening to leave, let them go along, let them go. I think that was the problem. Rather than to reach into them and trying to encourage them to stay with us. And the public witnessed that.
Yeah.
As I said, give up your rights for peace and for the betterment of the party. And who remained really and truly, quite frankly, could not have carried out the task.
Dr. Rose, if you would permit me here, I want to pick up on 2 points. One from my learned colleague, Mr. Wade, Comrade Wade, and Mr. Rupnarayan. Quickly, I'll start with Wade. I do agree with the expression shared by Mr. Wade. In addition to that, I personally, since 2022 on the 6th of August, I said to Comrade Norton, you are the leader. It is time you unite the party. Get everybody involved, right? Don't see people as though they're not a part of this organization. The organization can only be as strong as it ought to be once we got our numbers. Personally, if I'm perceived or categorized in this thing we call core, right? I don't fight against people. Once I am not engaged, I just stay away and do my thing in the background. And that is what I have been doing leading up to these elections. I wasn't formally in the campaign structure, but you know what? I went out there and I toiled hard and long just to convince people why they should vote APNU. On the issue, Mr. Rupnarayan raised several issues, and the one that really touched me is with this 50%. I wouldn't even go with the other issues because I don't want to sound controversial here. I think we're having a very good, professional, and healthy conversation so far. But this whole thing with the 50% increase in salaries for ministers, Mr. Rupnarayan, I, as a junior minister, I never enjoyed 50% increase in salaries. And I think the government, former finance minister, Mr. Winston Jordan, has explained this whole thing long and hard. How the formula for the increases came about with regards to the ministers' increase in salaries in 2015. And mind you, I wish to also remind you, Mr. Rupnarai, and the listening viewers here, it was the same Jack Deal in October of 2015 who said, and I might be paraphrasing him here, once the People's Progressive Party Civic gets back into office, they will reverse the salaries. Mr. Rupnarai, from 2020 to now, not near reverse. Rather than reversing, they keep increasing. Across the board increases when public servants get their salary. So I just want to encourage you perhaps to do a little more research on this whole thing so we can bring, settle this matter. Because I think this matter was thoroughly interrogated in the public domain, explained by Minister Winston Jordan. So I rest my case this evening, sir.
Mr. Rupnarai, you want to respond?
Well, I agree with Ms. Ferguson that Vice President Jagdeo did promise to reverse that 50%, but instead, he further increased the allowances, not the salary, the allowances of his ministers. Well, they can do that now. They have a whole lot of oil money. But when it comes to Jagdeo promises, you have to take that with a grain of salt, because in this campaign promise for 2020, he promised to renegotiate the oil contract, and here we are stuck with the same deal that we did in the PSA, right, production sharing agreement in 2016. So what kind of promise are you going to hold Jagdeo to? Then Mr. Jagdeo went on to stipulate his pension of close to 9,000 US monthly. Now, that 9,000 US monthly with other perks like security and all kind of electricity allowance and so comes out like 13,000 US monthly with all things. You know who gets a pension like that? President Barack Obama, former president. That's a first world payment, not a third world payment. So these are people who manipulate the system to suit themselves. And of course, Mr. Granger is benefiting from it, and we can go on and on. But coming back to the election results, right, I'll say this. GECOM needs to restructure, because when you look at the commissioners and the constitution of GECOM, there are 3 PPP and 3 PNC members. They vote against each other, 3 negative and 3 positive.
Leland, we're going to come to GECOM
GECOM
just now. We're going to come to GECOM just now.
Okay.
But Dr. Rose, let me just correct Mr. Rupnarai. It is not the allowances that were increased from 2020 to 2025. When we left government, a junior minister salary was 695,000. You calculate now from 2020 to now, a junior minister salary under the People's Progressive Party Civic now stands at, I think, close to probably $1.something million. The salary is totally different from the allowances. So from 2020, as I said before, as at August 2nd, 2020, junior minister salary under the coalition government was $695,541. Check the records now. After 5 years, a junior minister under the People's Progressive Party Civic earns over $1 million.
Okay.
So I just want to settle that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you, Ms. Ferguson. I quite agree with you.
Okay, folks, it's 17 minutes after 8, and we're listening to Globespan television here in New York and across the world, the globe. Now, Ms. Ferguson, I have a question for you here. There's a saying, and this question will go for all of you as well. They're saying, if you're leader of a party or leader of an organization, and 1 person leave or 2 person leave, then that's on them. But when you have 7, 8, 9, 10 people leaving, it shows that something is wrong with the leadership. In the case, I can tell you, I counted almost 11 people left the PNC under Norton during this election here, running up to the election. Ms. Ferguson, why you and a group of other MPs and other senior members of the party didn't come out and say, look, Norton, something is wrong? Did you all approach him and tell him this?
personal, I can speak for myself. I think just last week I had a letter in the newspaper asking for unity, and I did. I made reference to certain other elements in that letter. But just last week too, I personally reached out to Mr. Norton, the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, and I said we need to address what is really happening. So even though you may not see me in the public, being vocal on party matters, because I believe if we got internal issues, these issues must be dealt with internally. Yes, there are some who believe that once these issues are brought to the attention of the leadership, and the leadership, probably just in paying it no mind, people are now speaking out publicly. But you wouldn't find a Ferguson doing that, because my whole intent is to see a united People's National Congress reform. And as I said, I, Annette Ferguson, reached out to Mr. Norton to say, look, we got to address what is happening. This is public embarrassment to the party. The People's National Congress reform has never been at this state. Yes, if you're to ask me if there were challenges, yes, there were challenges. But those challenges were dealt with internally. You didn't have things really, being exposed in the public domain and bringing the organization, a 60-plus-year-old organization, to such an embarrassment. So I believe that probably, I don't know what going forward, how we intend to deal with this. But I personally, I will repeat for emphasis' sake, that I personally have reached out to Comrade Norton, asking him to address these things. Either we call a special general council meeting where all these issues can be, addressed, and we find common resolve going forward, right? To stop this hemorrhaging and this embarrassment the party now finds itself in. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wade, you said that you and Mr. Norton are friends, but under him, the party has hemorrhaged. The party has reached its lowest level. I don't think it can go lower than this level as it stands now. And Mr. Norton is saying that he will try to help to rebuild the party. But if you break something, you should not be there to rebuild it. You should move aside and let other people try to rebuild it. Do you think Mr. Norton should resign and give way to new leadership and then start the rebuilding of the party?
I hear the question, and I also hear Mr. Norton's position that he's going to wait probably until Congress and to give way to new leadership. My position on that is, should he leave now, will there be a vacuum, or there will be a fight or further emerging? So to keep whatever little we have together, he needs to stay there and to go out quietly. What is important in that, if he remains in the party, it must be seen that he's giving way to new leadership. If he continues to be the face of the party rather than be in the background, I believe every day will be a day lost. I believe that the support base, or the little support that we have, will become a little more discontent. Because quite frankly, if you move from, as you did mention the numbers, I think it's 156,000 votes that we lost, and you're there at the forefront. A lot of the base, a lot of our supporters, or people who would like to be re-engaged and to come back to the party and will want to support the party, we will continue to push them farther away if he is the forefront of the party. And I think he understands this. As he's an intelligent man, he must know this. So yes, I understand him staying now, but the approach must be seen by the Guyanese public, but that he is leaving. He must show that, okay, that when there's a press conference, he's not there. New persons are sitting there, and not just new persons. It must not be his handpicks or his close-up men or his lieutenants. It must be seen as a genuine effort to bring in new leadership and for new leadership to evolve. Because once you are seen as an Arbery man, you're tainted. You are tainted. So I understand that and of course his knowledge and expertise in the party, there must be some contribution, valuable contribution that he can give. But it must be from a supporting end. And it must be seen as him gradually leaving the party.
Thank you. Mr. Wade, let me ask you this question.
Not the party, the leadership.
The leadership. In naming is 12 MPs, even created more problems there, causing 2, 3, or 4 people to resign. Marvin Williams is one, a long-standing member of the Amerindian community within the party. Do you think is MPs reflect what should have been members of parliament? Who is going to be his attorney general critic in that party? Dexter Todd?
Well, let me respond generally. I read Freddie Kissoon's letter. I don't know if you saw it. You see it. And Freddie's letter is not without flaws. I think Freddie hit the nail on the hammer with his letters. We think the issue when you look at the 12 MPs, I don't believe or any one of the persons there are what we quote unquote may call the core of the PNC. They are PNC people, but they were the core. They are not persons that I know from years ago in the party. Ms. McDonald is a PNC. She represents more or less the union, the teachers. Very good, excellent. I believe on that base, there's a large constituency she represents there. You have Miss Flu Best. She's a teacher as well. She is from the East Bank. I think she's a hard worker. There is Narayan is his name, I believe. Riaz. He's also a teacher. There's 3 teachers there with 12 persons there. Whether or not the teaching constituency, how do you decide amongst them? How, if we need 3 teachers, the leader decides that. There is the issue, as you mentioned, with the AG rep. Well, I believe Win will control more or less who are the shadow ministers or who will be spokespersons, because they have the chief whip and so forth. However, I don't believe they have a lawyer, so I believe Mr. Todd will have to represent or more or less maybe the shadow AG. The difficulty is, and this is, more or less, I believe this is a personal question in relation to me and my performance and so forth in the courts. Every single day I walk on the catwalk in the courts, I'm on the supermarket, I'm in the streets, I have to answer a question why I'm not in
Parliament.
I have to answer that question. And I believe my success over the 5 years, I believe is a detriment to that. Because I've done an extremely, quite frankly, if you want to check what I've done, I don't need nobody for validation, but the record is there to show my performance in the courts. Also, there's Mr. Royce, the fourth, who also have done a lot of work. Let me give an example. I remember going into Letem when the PPP took away the building, the PNC building. I went into Letem and I took back the building from the PPP. I represented persons who were charging Letem all free. When I left Letem, the PPP went back in the building. Nobody went into the building back and so forth. But the fact that I went into Letem, I took back the building. There was a big celebration. And the celebration was with Mr. Norton's leadership that we regained this building. You follow? For me, I was like, no, this is Darren Wade. I went up to Letem and I said, rather than going to some Benab or going by someone place, some meeting, we must go into the party leadership. So I took that initiative and went back into that building. And I believe that I should have been recognized. And I believe that more or less that was my problem. That I won these matters that I've done well, and it is known that I have done well. And more often time, the credit didn't go to the leadership of the party. I suspect that there may be some difficulties in relation to the proposed who may be more or less a shadow AG, Mr. Todd, who's more or less a criminal lawyer. He is a former policeman. So probably those are the things that Mr. Norton probably looking at with Dexter. You have two things. You have a policeman and you also have an attorney. But then again, you have 3 teachers. So Mr. And the other question, as I mentioned, let me see how to go wrong is and put this over as best as I can. Young people now looking on, because young attorneys as well, they're now looking on into the party. They may say, why should I join such an institution whereby there is this lawyer who worked well, who has done well for the PNC, but haven't found a place in the 12th. But someone who came around the party probably 3 months ago, a person who ran as a prime minister kind of another party, a person who came to who recently, back in the GECOM case, who initially said that he was part of the PBP prosecuting team that they put together to prosecute the PNC persons or the GECOM staff and so on, who now came and now have a place in the party 12. So those are things I believe that we'll have to reckon with. I believe the party of itself, because when we look at the 12, whether or not they are quote unquote core PNC person, the party of itself, we need to come together. In the next Congress, we need to work hard and build back the party. So coming in the next elections, it is the PNC who is feeling its candidate, I use a cricketing term very often, who's putting forward candidates who come from the core of the PNC, leadership coming from the bottom rather than at the top. And I believe once leadership comes from the bottom, is bottom up, you're more credible. You give credence to the process. People see you and people say, I will vote for you.
True.
I trust I responded to your question, Dr. Rose.
Right. Mr. Rupnarayan.
Yes, sir.
The PPC has 25 ministers. They have dropped Globespan. Ms. Waldron took over his position, and the Minister of Labor, but they've been made advisors to Home Affairs and Labor, respectively. They have switched the Minister of Education, Ms. Manikan, to local government, and Ms. Sonia Parag to education. And they have promoted Susan Rodriguez and Deodat Indar to ministers, and so forth. Everyone is saying that the PP has a sound cabinet. In your opinion, do you support that analysis?
No, sir. I think half the PP cabinet are capable people, and I think half of them are total dumbheads. And I've seen them at work, and I have actually witnessed what the products of their ministries have produced, and I can say that it's not quite what a country should be looking for in the performance of the people that their taxpayers pay over $1 million a month in salary for, right? For instance, there is great evidence that several ministers own properties in the United States. And there's also evidence that 2 ministers own tremendous mansions in Guyana. With their salary, there is no way, if they never spent a dime of their salary that they have been working from 2020 to 2025, there's no way they could own those properties. I've been in real estate for 25 years. I could tell you the value of a property.
And they could borrow money from the bank. They could borrow money.
Repeat that?
They could borrow money from the banks.
Well, they can borrow money from the bank, but that also can be investigated. But Ghana doesn't have a system where you can find a minister guilty or a high-level public servant guilty or any public servant and sentence them to jail. Have anyone here on this program ever heard, viewers, a minister of Ghana going to jail? Well, we have quite a few ministers in other countries, including senators in the United States and congressmen and high public officials. Even the Speaker of the New York State Assembly, Senator Siller, was given 13 years jail for awarding contracts to friends and family. We have Santos that got 4 years jail. We have Monserrati that got 5 years jail. They're all senators. They were found guilty of corruption. They got jail. It so happened that the word corruption has been banned from use in Parliament. But that's another story. In terms of what Mr. Wade is saying, build back the PNC, well, if I were a PNC member and I lost 150,000 votes, I would definitely want to build back my party. But on what basis are we going to build something on? You must have a strong foundation to build any structure, whether it's a physical structure or a social structure. What would the PNC offer the people of Guyana if the people of Guyana needs to vote for them? Because the history of the PNC is not very nice. When in 1992, the year that we had the democratic elections in Ghana, the Carter Center came, the PNC lost the elections, and then Mr. Hoy, the leader of the PNC, said he will make the country ungovernable. 5 years later, when Janet Jagan won the elections, he came out with a slogan, slow fire, more fire. Now, I don't like the PPP, I don't like the PNC, but objectively speaking, no PPP leaders ever made these rants, slow fire, more fire. You know, no PPP, so no PPP minister has ever threatened violence on anybody. I never see that. But there have been outright accusations by PNC ministers of being involved in a lot of criminal activities, violent criminal activities. The PP is involved in a whole lot of financial criminal activities too. So we have a choice here. Who are we going to choose to run this country? That's a sad thing. And I always feel this, if Annette Ferguson wrote and Miss Ferguson wrote a letter that the PNC should rise again. Good, I'm glad if the PNC rise again. I'm glad if anyone that falls and rise again. But it's not a rise again that's what we're looking at. The PNC need to be reborn. Hinduism believes in something called reincarnation. Take a new birth and come back clean and do something good for the people. You can't build on something that is not a strong foundation. When Mr. Norton went to Parliament and said, we were accused of banning some food stuff, and we are proud of that. How can you be proud of starving people in that country, Indian, black, and American, all people? You ban a whole lot of basic stuff like milk for children. I can understand you ban apples, but that basic food stuff that people live on to build a proper brain structure. That's why Ghana don't have so much bright people. Because when they are deprived of proper nutritious food for their brain, children don't develop properly. Planet flour is no substitute for lactogen. Now, we were talking about GECOM. You ready to listen to what I have to say about GECOM?
No, I'll be coming to that. Let's
Okay.
Because I want to respond to the statements that before you move on to something else, I want to respond to Mr. Ryan's statements.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me start with 1997 that PPP won that election. I read a case recently where the then Chief Justice was very critical of the 1997 election and the conduct of that election. And it was Janet Jagan who ignored a court order. The court held that those elections were null and void when she threw that writ over her head. So we talk about slow fire, most fire. It was a protest because of the PPP undemocratic means.
Yes.
And as a result of those protests. So let us, if we want to talk, let us be honest. And let us don't keep back anything. And when we talk about banning food stuff, already there were restrictions on food stuff. There were economic decisions that were made back then that we are benefiting today. Because now, as a result of that, because of Forbes Burnham and the excellent work that he has done, now we could produce food and being self-sufficient. So when we want to make this pronouncement and so forth, we must be honest. And we must explain the rationale behind these restrictions that we had in relation to food stuff. And not only Guyana had those restrictions, several other countries around the world. And it has to do with our exchange rate. The exchange, we have to give foreign monies to buy these stuff.
Yes.
And if we want it, and right now, we are suffering in the Caribbean community generally because of the things that we want to eat, the things that we are consuming, things that we can produce right here in Guyana. Why we have cows there, we have dairy, we have all these places where we could be producing our own milk powder, our own milk. Because first Bonham believed in these people, and he believed that what the person were doing in the United States and in Europe, we could have done it right here in Guyana. So we need to be very honest when we make those pronouncements.
Okay.
And the very investment to our development that was done by Forbes Burnham. It was under the PNC that we had free education from nursery to university that the people knocked out when they came in 92. Let us not put it, because at the end of the day, Young black boys and girls are listening to this program. And when you were saying that all of their leadership has been bad, and that they cannot produce, they cannot do nothing properly over all of these years. And Mr. Rupnarayan made a statement in relation to 2015, 2020. And I would like to say that one of the mistakes that I believe that the government made, because all of the contractors, those who benefit significantly under the APNU, was the same PPP contractors. So when Mr. Nanlala made the statement concerning preferential treatment or some preferential must be given to PPP supporters, when the APNU was in power, they operate more fairly. So everybody could partake, whether you're from the hinterland or the coastland. So I want to put that on record, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me go to a commercial break and I'll be back. And folks, you're listening to Globespan television here. It's 8:39 p.m. And let me tell you about this here. All from onesupplier.com. All from onesupplier.com. We can get all your West Indian food, groceries, roti, fish, curry, meat, you name it. You can get it from there. All from onesupplier.com. You can use your EBT cards, your credit cards, and your debit cards. They're located at 10809 Liberty Avenue in Richmond Hill. All from one supplier. The phone number is 718-551-3292. 718-551-3292. Now, my favorite is Globespan. Globespan has been in business now for over 30 years. And they've got the experience to make sure that you travel in comfort and in style. You call Globespan, you book your ticket, you book your hotel rooms or whatever it is, and you'll be there in comfort and style. It has upcoming tours to Dubai, India, South Africa, and Norway. Globespan, years of experience. Located at 10809 Liberty Avenue in Richmond Hill as well. The number is 718-845-0437 in New York. In Georgetown, 227-1701. Rosalton on the Quarantine, 337-4287. Shaguna in Trinidad and Tobago, 665-3383. And in Val Park in Trinidad and Tobago, 645-1604. Call Globespan for all your traveling needs. Thank you. Ms. Forrester, you're going to say something?
Yes, Dr. Rose, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I agree 100% in what my colleague Darren Wade just shared. And also to remind Mr. Rupnarayan that it was under the PNC government, the Desmond Hoyt administration, that we had the ERP, the Economic Recovery Program, which the People's Progressive Party, after coming into government in 1992, they were able to utilize this very plan and build on it. So I just want to set this record straight. And I also want to remind Mr. Rupnarayan, when he spoke about democracy return in 1992, Darren shared what occurred in 1997. We must remind our listeners and viewers here that in 2011, in 2006, it was the very People's Progressive Party Civic that claimed a seat from the AFC in Linden that Samuel Hines squatted for 5 years. What democracy do you call that? In 2011, they were actually caught, Google Boodle, trying to work the magic to give them the majority, right? And it was Vincent Alexander who thwarted the entire scheme. Also in 2015, so these are things we must not forget. So don't come here, Mr. Rupnarayan, trying to cast and blame and let the coalition or the PNC look bad or as a dark political entity. No, sir. No, sir. So that's just what I want to put on the record.
Let's go to GECOM.
In 2015,
Now,
15th
Mr.
of GECOM.
Ryan, GECOM, most people have said have done a good job in this election. It was peaceful, and they were able to produce the results within a day or the most 2 days after the election were cast. So do you think GECOM has done a good job?
Well, that's a yes and a no question, because the first and foremost objective of any election is to let their candidates put their views forward, and if they do it separately or they do it on a debate stage, people would listen and people would analyze. It's so sad that we never had an opportunity. The APNU and WIN never had the television rights or the newspaper coverage that the PPP gave themselves, because the PPP control almost every media house in Guyana. Secondly, GCOM is three PNC and three PPP members. So when they vote against each other, GCOM is reduced to a 75-year-old woman vote. Her opinion counts. So one 75-year-old retired judge dictates what happens in Guyana for the elections. So that's a travesty in itself. It's a travesty and a tragedy. Moving forward, Guyana should have, and this has to be mandated by Parliament, of course, Ghana should have a fixed election date. Let's say every 5 years, the first Monday in December or something like that, or like how we have it here in November. And every 4 years we have elections in November. I think is the second Tuesday or something like that. So what we need is a fixed election date, so any incumbent government, whether be it APNU or the PP, cannot maneuver the date and manipulate the date to suit what they're planning to do to sway voters. Like PPP wanted the election date to be very close to the opening of the bridge, the Damara Bridge. So that's one aspect of GCOM that was sadly lacking. Then another aspect of GCOM is that apart from the fact that they didn't have any public debates, GCOM did not criticize the incumbent government in allowing free media and proportionate media to the other contestant parties. The only media I was listening to and looking at was PPP dominating NCN and the NCN. And when you have a high-ranking official like Anil Nandalal calling people house slaves, that's a disgrace. He should know better than that. Then he comes the next day and apologize. The damage has already been done. And finally, there's one thing you should know, that the Speaker of the House should be changed at this election, because when you look at how the Speaker of the House comes about, he's selected as a nominee from the opposition and so on. But the current Speaker of the House represents not not an impartial person, but he is the 37th seat of the PPP in Parliament. Anything opposing to the PPP is knocked down by the Speaker's gravel. The gas to energy project has never been debated. Now, has any inquiry made into scaled-on wastage of $200 million, and we can go on and on. So GCOM has to get a new face, and WIN has gotten more seats than the PNC, so GCOM has to change. We need a new face of GCOM, and there's no pun intended here, but we really need some more pleasant faces in GCOM. And also, the Mr. Alexander, a very learned gentleman, has declared that his position is a constitutional position and he cannot be removed from that. So that's something that that Mr. Wade can answer. He is the expert here. And I may mention that the join the party legislation needs to be streamlined, because Ashiki Soon, who was supposed to serve just a small tenure, then gave her seat to another person, I think with Timothy Jonas Amano, squatted in Parliament for the remainder of Parliament, refusing to vacate the seat. And there is no law that says she has to come there, whether it's from GCOM or whether it's from the legislative board or whether it's from a parliamentary perspective. There is no law that says she has to move, or any legislation that compels her to move and call her illegally occupying a seat in Parliament. So there's a lot of streamlining need to take place in Parliament.
Mr. Wade, you want to answer that? Mr. Alexander did say that they've been appointed indefinitely. They were nominated by the PNC, but they are not appointed by the PNC. And they were appointed by the government. Their position is an indefinite position, means that it's a constitutional position. Are you aware of that, Mr. Wade?
I had a look at the provision, slight look, and it provides really and truly for more or less a permanent. It appears that it for permanent commissioners at GECOM. Nonetheless, as an attorney at law, I've seen the court, if example, in the Patterson case, the CCJ came up with a formula and a method of interpreting the law. So the interpretation and application of the law is for the courts, and the courts for the determine the spirit and what the framers meant or the intention of the framers of the Constitution. So Mr. Alexander will have a say, we will have our say on the program, but the person who have the true say and the determination of any provision within the Constitution is the courts.
But do you think
Mr. Wade, that would go for all three PNC commissioners? So the PNC got 12 seats, Win got 16 seats, but the PNC wants to remain the 3 seats there in GECOM. There's something wrong with the logic there.
No. What I'm saying the true person who could truly interpret and apply the Constitution as an attorney at law, there are tools that the court, that's in the court's armory, to use to interpret the Constitution to come to the intent of the framers of the Constitution. And that is why I gave the example with Patterson case. Nowhere in the Constitution it's mentioned where a list of persons need to be given to the president by the opposition leader to provide for the GECOM chair. So what I'm saying, a matter of this, it is the court who will interpret the intent of the framers of the Constitution. Certainly at the time when this provision was placed in the Constitution, we imagined that there would be like one main opposition and the PP, I believe that at that time. So an issue like this, it is the court who will say what it is, the true intent of the framers of the Constitution. What is the mischief?
Okay, but Mr. Wade, my question to you is this. It has been known that the opposition ought to nominate 3 members and the government nominates 3 members. Do you think that the opposition now has changed, that these 3 members should resign based on what has been known all these years and they put their integrity in place?
So this question is not a legal question you ask. It's a moral question.
It's a moral question,
right.
Yeah.
Right, because it's not a legal question. The issue here, because quite frankly, there are some ranting, there are some concerns within the PNC, not only the PNC support base, or whether or not these commissioners can effectively carry out the job. So I think the PNC as a whole will have to examine whether or not, or to see or matter of fact, do an introspection and rationalize whether or not if having these commissioners are good for the party there or not. But at the end of the day, it is up to the commissioners. It is up to them to decide whether or not they will remain. I don't believe the PNC could ask them to remove, because they themselves will say, while we are here as opposition commissioners, we are here to carry the constitutional function, not a function for the PNC. So the PNC can't remove us. So we always have to have that consideration that the PNC could say move. The PNC could say resign, but they may not resign. So really, this is an individual decision and one for them to consider by themselves, the conscience, to use the conscience to come at.
This question is for all of you. Do you think Claudia Singh should resign and give that position to a younger person?
Yes, I believe she should, because if we look at what happened in the 2020 elections, and even further, what occurred in the 2025 elections, and Dr. Rose, you would recall that there were reports from the EU mission, CARICOM, the Carter Center, and all those reports bear some degree of similarities, calling for GECOM to be non-political, calling for the clean, there should be clean voters list, there should be biometrics, there should be, what else? So many things with regards to laws governing finances for elections campaign and all manner of things. So these very things that were contained in these reports, Madam Claudette Singh refused to ensure that we look at least before we head to 2025 that these things are conducted. Yes, while I understand what the Chief Justice might have said in terms of persons' names cannot be removed from the listener, I'm sure that GECOM could have improvised some new mechanism where they would be able to get the voters list cleansed to some extent when persons, one, become deceased, and there should be intense collaboration between GECOM administration and also the Guyana Registrar's Office, right? When persons are deceased, you have exchanges of documents and information between these two entities so that persons' names would be expunged from the voters list. And similarly, this can also happen with the Guyana Police Force or the Immigration Office and GECOM. So if you know that X person left on X day, you notify GECOM. So whatever mechanism, whatever formula they're going to use to have a red flag put to that person's name, and until the immigration office informs them on X person return to country, then you know exactly, how you're going to deal with their names reappearing on the list. So I believe with advanced technology now, many things can be done, but is there the will? Is there the will? And for me, I have seen Claudette Singh in 2 elections, and we see exactly how she performs. So for me, I believe it is time she goes. Just like in 2015, when Barrett called for Dr. Steve Surajbali to go, Steve Surajbali resigned and went his way. So why now we in the opposition and the public calling for her to go? Why is it that she's so reluctant in leaving the office? That I can't understand.
Okay. Mr. Wade, who was the Chief Justice that ruled that you can't remove a name from the list? Was it
Roxanne George?
Roxanne George?
Yes.
Mr. Wade, what caused it to that was part of the Constitution? Do you know?
Let me be frank with you, I didn't read the case, but I believe that a similar issue could have been filed or should have been filed over the last 5 years. That's one of my criticisms for the opposition. We were not busy enough in the courts. There's several issues that we should have brought within the last 5 years to the court, because this is a first instance decision. And if you have brought a similar issue, as Mr. Ferguson mentioned, where GECOM could have find a way to go around it, the opposition itself could have found a way to go around the Chief Justice decision and file a fresh case and let it go straight up to the top. That's how I would have handled it.
What caused it to make that ruling, though? To me, that was such a terrible ruling.
I said I didn't have the opportunity to read the decision, but what I'm saying is it's only a first instance decision, which is significant. The operative word is a first instant decision, which means the Court of Appeal has not addressed the CCJ. So we still have an opportunity to file a action, somehow with the same issues and so forth, and let it go straight up to the top. There may be the issue of res judicata, but there's a way to avoid it, because it's a first instant decision, and let it go up to the top to the CCJ or Apex Court. Yes, I made it clear on prior shows when it comes to Claudette Singh, I do not, Justice Claudette Singh retired, I do not get into discussion about her because of your relative or close relation. So those are things that I do not comment on out of family respect and so forth. I do not comment on those things. Okay. But what I can say though, Mr. Rupner mentioned something about free and fair elections and so forth. I want to comment on that from the beginning. Oh no, you, Dr. Rose. I cannot recall a single international organization saying this election was free and fair. Matter of fact, if I could be correct, it was the EU said these elections were not fair. And I understand a senior government official has something harsh to say to the EU. I remember part of the union meeting with the OAS. I could remember Bruce Golding from the beginning saying that they're frustrated with the process. I remember he saying to me because of the multiple vote, the bloated list. Their issue of multiple voting.
But Mr. Wade, your bar association said the election was fair and free.
Well, the bar association that I mentioned is not an organization of lawyers, or not a professional organization. Then it's a club. It's not like in other countries where it's a compulsory organization. It's an organization that represents the lawyers of Guyana. They represent themselves. But I cannot remember that it was free and fair. I probably missed that. I probably missed that. But there's I cannot recall a single international organization saying these elections were free and fair.
Many of them said that.
Know the international organization, if you could tell me one of them and point me to that, I'd be grateful. I recall all of them being frustrated with the current electoral system in Guyana, the bloated list that have been changed. The PPP.
They spoke about the bloated list, but it said the election was conducted fairly.
The campaign, no, you said they would not go so far to say it was fair. In the press conference, as a matter of fact, I don't know if they got a final report. But if you could direct me, if you could cite and those organizations and when and where they say it, that will help me. But I could bet you.
I'll send those information to you. Folks, we have come to the end of the program and must thank our guests. But before doing so, I want to ask them to make a final comment. Starting with you, Ms. Ferguson, what's your closing remarks?
In my closing remarks, Dr. Rose, I just, once again, just as I started, to thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear on this platform, Globespan, so that, I can share and educate our viewers and listeners. As the People's Progressive Party Civic return to office, I look forward to still holding them accountable, even though I am not amongst the 12 parliamentarians, but what I have been doing over the past decade, I will continue to hold, because at the end of the day, it is the people who matters for me. So I will remain committed to the people of Guyana, and I also remain committed to the People's National Congress reform, which I do believe will rise and rise shortly. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.
Mr. Rupner.
Well, first of all, I agree with my two colleagues. Claudette Singh, Justice Claudette Singh, should resign. She's 75 years of age. Yeah, we agree on something here. She should go. And many people refer to her as retired justice. I've never heard of Claudette Singh doing any landmark case in Guyana. So moving forward, I think the GECOM should be constituted in a way in which you can always have a vote that will prevail. If you have 3 people yes and 3 people no, we don't have a vote. And Claudette Singh is going to remain GECOM, and GECOM is Claudette Singh. So I would suggest 2 WIN and 2 PNC and 3 PPP, and that should be an equitable distribution based on their seats in Parliament. So when you have a vote, you know where the decision is going to be made. And in conclusion, I'd like to say this. As much as I would not be a PPP member or a PNC member, I think Guyana needs a new party. Because we are not going into Burnham and Jagan era. We're not going into communism and Marxism. We're not going into non-aligned movement. We're not going back to the kick down the road bandits. We're not going back to Marxism. We need a new mind, a new way of thinking in that country. This is an age of social media where the older folks, all they know is to handle the phone. They're not computer literate. And as Guyana moves forward to be one of the fastest growing economy in the world, we have to think of how we're going to handle that country. We don't need this old order anymore to handle our business, right? You need modern technology, modern brains, and you need modern leadership. That's why I think it's time for both PNC and PPP to pack their bags and go.
Thank you, Mr. Rupner. And Mr. Wade?
That's me.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. Dr. Rose, look, I read the Guardian, the British Guardian yesterday, and and it's 58% of Guyana, despite the oil wealth, despite of all the money, the billions that are coming in, 58% of Guyana is below the poverty line. Sadly, I don't believe we have been at such place before in our history. So, and that's why I do this, because of the people, the poor, the needy. Is a conviction in me. And like my sister mentioned, and comrade Ferguson, despite not being in the 12, despite not being selected, I have a renewed strength, and I'm ready to go on the ground and build a party from bottom up, group by group, coming back strong. Yes, I understand what transpired. I understand the issues, and we need to reform. We need to come again stronger, and group by group, vote by vote, person by vote, we could do this, and we all have a responsibility to hold the PPP accountable. It's time everybody came here. All of our ancestors came here. They worked, they struggled, and they're entitled to the fair share. Let us get rid of the friends, family, and favorite that is benefited under this government, and let us have a more equitable and fair distribution of our wealth. And they could expect me to be forefront. They could expect me where necessary to file court actions as before. So not because I'm not chosen to go to Parliament, Dr. Rose. I am here for the people, and I believe I have a purpose, and that is to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Wade, and must thank all our listeners and our sponsors. Thank you for tuning in tonight, our listeners. And I want to thank Noir Singh again for making this program available, and Devin Bissoon and Ryan Gobin, our two technical directors. And most of all, I want to thank you, our guest, Mr. Darren Wade, not a senior counsel, a counsel, a prominent lawyer, Miss Anna Ferguson, an HR consultant and social worker, former minister in the Ministry of Public Works, and Mr. Leland Rupnerine, a real estate broker and a political analyst here in New York. Thank you all, and thanks again to all our listeners. Thank you very much. Stay on the line. Don't go away. We'll talk after this switched off. Devin, are we off?